Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Joining me on the DevReady Podcast today, I have David Colwell from Tricentis. For those of you that are new here, I'm meeting David really for the first time. We'll get to know him together. So David, I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name's David. I'm the Vice President of AI and Machine Learning at Tricentis. Been doing that for the last 7 years or so. It's been quite a while. But yeah, in that time, I've built and trained a lot of neural networks. I've built a team that trains neural networks, and I've built but not trained five small natural networks that run around on the ground around me, my children. But yeah, they're somewhat more disobedient than my neural networks. I haven't had as much luck in training those as I had the regression models.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the training times are quite a bit longer for them.
yeah, I know, right? Well, one of them's going on 11 years now, and it's still hard to get them to tick off all the chores on their list. So, I'd say that large language models are far more compliant. So,
Yep. Yeah, I find that the large language models and children do the same thing. If you tell them not to do something, that's when now you've embedded that idea in their mind, and that's what they go and do.
yeah, actually, now that you say that, we're starting to check off a few things on the list. Confidently says they've done something when they actually haven't done it. Yes, check. That's you've made your bed. No, that's not making your bed. Yes. So it turns out hallucinations are a surprisingly natural thing, as it may be.
Yep. If you look at it in that lens, it definitely is.
Yeah.
So, what led you to where you are at Tricentis, or what's a bit of your background and history? So you've been working in the real AI space.
Yep.
If you've been training neural networks and machine learning, everyone thinks you're just ChatGPT is AI, but it's been around for 50 years. So
Yeah.
where did you get your journey started, and how did you get there?
Oh, saying it's been around longer than ChatGPT makes you an AI hipster. No, you were there before it was cool. Yeah, so I actually began my career journey way back in data entry, but I automated my way out of that job. It's a funny story for another day, I think. But ended up in the world of QA automation and doing engineering at startups. So I was working in the realm of QA, and I always thought automation was like the future of being able to free up quality engineers' time and give them that ability back to be able to spend more of their time on bug-seeking behavior. But the industry kind of drifted towards automation is QA rather than automation frees up QA. And so while I was sort of working in that domain, I was running consultancies, helping companies build good QA practices. The guys from Tricentis approached me, and I'd used their tools before. I kind of admired their approach to QA automation, which was very much focused around, don't automate everything, just automate the stuff that matters to automate. And I thought, I've done my time being in QA. I might as well see what the grass is like on the other side, where you're building the tools that us QAs use. So that was an interesting jump. It showed me a lot about how QA works and how the tooling works. And you kind of look from the other side, you see what are the needs that QA people are telling me now that I could reflect back to them and say, yes, I've been in your world. I feel your pain there. It really helped to do some of that prioritization. And initially, I was sort of in what's known as the solution architect role, which is very different to what solution architect um, in engineering means, where they say it's the person that architects the solution. Solution architecture in software terms is the people that know the product, know the domain, and go out to the customers and say, here's how that product can help you solve the problem. I got kicked out of solution architecture, I would say. They have a different story. They say that I fled because I kept trying to make changes to the product. It's hard to leave an old horse behind. And the founder at the time said, "Look, if you've got all these ideas for how you can change the product, why don't you come back and join the R&D side of the fence?" And so I ran our innovation lab for a while, trying to figure out how to pull new ideas into the engineering pipeline. And there was a few ideas that popped up with regard to artificial intelligence. At the time, we didn't have a discipline for AI. This was sort of around the 2018 mark, when AI was sort of a thing that was sort of like everyone would talk about it a little bit, but it wasn't super interesting, and sort of a niche technology. And so me and another guy called Michael Keeley sort of garaged up an AI prototype for Tricentis that ended up becoming our Vision AI product. So we taught ourselves artificial intelligence. We learned the same way everyone in AI learns. It's like you start with the MNIST data set, and you build your first neural networks for sort of like regression classifiers into convolutional nets, and we proved that we could do interesting things with artificial intelligence within Tricentis. So the founder said, "Well, you're the only people that are really telling me that this can happen, and you've proved it can happen. Can you just make it happen more?" And so he gave me a domain and said, "Build a team, make that team grow." We've got patents now. We've filed scientific papers. We've published and trained many neural network models. We were doing a lot of this research into how to solve the human language problem in the early days of Transformers, when it was things like Bert and Albert, and those were the initial days when everyone's kind of forgotten them. And I remember giving a talk in sort of the 2019, 2020 mark when the early GPT models were coming out, and they were writing very hilarious Harry Potter fan fiction, and like things about, tell me what the next chapter of Harry Potter is going to be, and it would say, well, Ron was now spiders. He just was. There was nothing he could do about it. You're like, oh, cool. Okay, it's got the idea, but
It's got
hasn't quite
there's some
cottoned
potential.
on. And I was, everyone in the crowd laughs, and you say, no, this is actually a breakthrough. It understands Harry Potter, and it can speak words coherently. They may not be sensible words, but it can speak them coherently. And that was when we started attenuating to it more. But Transformers weren't practical for that period of time. Like, they were expensive by that day's standard, which is hilarious when you look now at, oh, they were 200
Yep.
million parameters. And you're like, wow, that's cute. Now that's like one arm of a language model. So
Yeah, you have to several trillion on the, I think, the latest
exactly, yeah.
GPT
It's
model.
like, well, we've left that leaderboard behind a ways ago. But they also didn't kind of jump over that the uncanny valley for a while. They got stuck on one side, not being particularly useful. And as soon as the first industrial large language models started popping up, which realistically was sort of the GPT-3 models, then we started paying attention. We started putting our eggs into that proverbial basket. I published a blog post of like our first AI agent actually hit prototype world in 2023, which was a tool using AI for building automated tests. But it's taken quite a while for sort of the language models to catch up to the aspirations in that regard, and now they're here. And so we've been refocusing a lot of our efforts around agentic AI and working in that space. And
Hmm.
it's been a strange career, because you went from pushing the rock up the hill of saying, "Hey, everyone, AI is cool. We need to be using it," to every customer coming to me and saying, "Why aren't you using enough AI?" So you get to see both
Yep.
sides of the hill, rolling up it and then stumbling down it. So
Yeah, chasing the rock down as fast as you
that's
can.
right. What's the person? Sisyphus was the one pushing it up the hill. Is there like an
Yeah.
anti-Sisyphus where you're chasing it down the other side?
So it's been an interesting trajectory over the past, say, 6-7 years, and for yourself in that space, and seeing really the core of what AI was versus what everyone is saying AI now. Like, everyone's an AI startup. We've got a product that we're building, and we're using large language models in it to assist.
Mhm.
We call it an AI product because that's what everyone uses. But really, we're not doing much underlying AI technology or development, because the large language models provide so much value now that you don't need to. That entire domain is like, you don't play in that space.
Mhm.
There's so
Yes.
much more money and so many bigger players that there's no point competing.
Yeah, I saw a statistic the other day. It's like the value of, I think it was Cursor. They're now valued at like $10 billion or something, which puts them, I think, ahead of Mixtral, one of the large language model providers, and
Yep.
on a pretty close par. I know Anthropic just recently got a massive new valuation to be much, much more than they were before, but they're kind of
Yep.
on trajectory to overtake Anthropic, which is kind of ironic because they use Anthropic models to.
Yep. They're
So
just the ones that know how to use the tool better.
yeah,
I guess
it's
that's what it is. And they're value producing because they're developing code, which is a lot of time saving. Where if you're using Anthropic directly, you have to actually know how to use it, know how to get the benefit out of it. So
yeah, I think
it's a lot harder to get that.
it, it's kind of funny because this current version of AI, I don't necessarily poke too much fun at every company being an AI company, or at the top-down mandates that a lot of our customers are facing, where the executive board will say to them, go find me ways that we can be utilizing AI. Like, I saw this, like we've all seen this playbook before with go find ways where you can be using cloud, or go find ways where you can be using blockchain, or Yeah, you name it. In tech phase, there's always the hyper early adopters. This is a little bit different. In any time we stumble into a new form of automation, there's a huge saturation of quick wins. Like we saw this with factories. It's like, okay, the quick wins of the things that you can stamp, like stamping
Yep.
metal or stamping anything that's moldable that you can inject. It's like, great. You used to take a day to produce a shovel, and now when you go to a blacksmith, and now you can stamp the thing in a third of a second and pump out 500 in a minute. But then it kind of tapers off, if that makes sense. Like, to go from, hey, stamping, and then you go, well, the next step up was sort of like maybe Tesla are doing it by building these enormous giga presses and doing micro machining. But you're getting
Mhm.
like less return for that investment because you're chipping away at the edge. The same thing happened with computers, like in early days of just process a file and spit it out, or calculators and things like that. They're all forms of automation, and the trend remains true that at the beginning of that form of automation being invented, the most value is generated the quickest at the beginning, and then you start to see tapering results towards the end. LLMs are a form of automation of thought. I won't get into, unless you want to take the conversation in that direction, whether or not it's a good thing that we're automating thought and what it does to our brain to delegate thinking to something else. But we're at the early stage of that automation of thought. So we're seeing huge value
Yep.
relatively simply gained by just saying, hey, this thing can do the job. Let me just arm the job over to it and say, do that job. So in that regard, I don't have any objection to companies that say, here's an AI mandate, go and make AI happen, because that directive could be enough for companies to find those quick wins just by executive fear. Now,
Yep.
I do have a hypothesis, and I'm willing to be proven wrong on this, that a lot of the early AI companies are going to find that their value is so easily created, the competition will easily emerge, and that the customers will be disloyal. And you see this with the language models at the moment. Like, it's very easy to swap
Mhm.
between language models. Apple just jumped from OpenAI to Google. We've got at least four backends that we can use to, back end things onto, and customers are the
Yep.
same. But it's actually not that hard to switch between Cursor and GitHub Agent. So
No.
a lot of the effort you're investing is not in learning the tool, because that's the promise, is the AI makes it easy to pick up and run with. It's in learning how to use AI to do a task. And that
Yep.
is portable. You can use that in Cursor, you can use it in GitHub. And so, in the same way that the model providers are trying to find ways of branching out, like Anthropic did with computer use, and then the other ones try to catch up, or the OpenAI did with thinking models or reasoning models, and then DeepSeek and Anthropic both caught up to them, and now Google's in that space as well. They're trying to find an edge that makes you unique. So I think we're going to see a huge number of AI startups rapidly appear. I think the thing that is going to make AI value durable is the quality of the tools you build it on. And so that's like, if you think of the research models, what are the tools they have access to? Well, Google and Arbex, right?
Web search.
Yeah, web search, basically.
Yeah.
But what if it had access to like deep scientific research archives, like things that aren't publicly available? Well, now that's an edge, and that's a durable
Mhm.
edge. So things like that, I think, are far more durable. I think you're going to find AI companies that pop up and say, we invested our time in solving a general problem. Like, we solved general coding with our new coding language model. They're rapidly going to be outcompeted by the generalist models that are just going to do it better
Yep.
with a larger amount of money. So that, that.
It's an interesting space because, like you said, you can chop and change AI because every week there's a new better AI. Like 6 weeks ago, it was Claude 3.7.
Yep.
4 weeks ago, it was Gemini 2.5. The weekend, it's now GPT 4.1. Is now leading the software engineering test results. So it's that is effectively like having an internet provider the way you INC which large language model you use. You've got the pipe, you've got access to the internet. You don't care how you connect as long as you got it. Where you're saying the durable edge is if you can have some sort of secret source that no one else has, that's going to give you the moat. But it's also if you can build a tool using one of those language models, but have the consistent value being given to it and having the consistency in the output. Because that's what people I think have trouble with is everyone's going online and trying to say, oh, here's the 100 or the one prompt you need to do anything you want, or here's the 100 prompts that do everything in your business.
You're describing
None
my
of that matters
LinkedIn, yes.
because it's ridiculous on there. But you need to be able to have consistency in what you do with it, because that's how any process is automated. Unless you can have that consistency, you can throw as much AI at it as you want. And then if you're moving into sort of like the agent space, you end up spending so much more money on having an AI try and figure out what tool to use because there's no consistency in the process.
Yeah, there's a mantra that we give to our internal teams on the when to use AI because much as I'm throwing some fairly dark predictions out there about how AI models everything's transient, nothing is permanent. It almost sounds like I'm quoting from, is it the Book of Ecclesiastes or something? Everything is meaningless. No, that's not what I. It's not necessarily what I'm saying here. Um, what I'm saying is we will discover that as AI levels out a lot of these new playing fields, that the old edges will reemerge, and that will be access to a customer base, access to underlying capabilities that will make that customer base work, access to data, access to even financial resources. These are going to be the edges that make AI companies into durable AI companies. I think that the journey towards consistency, or people say it's like the elimination of hallucinations, is kind of one of those buzzwords. If you can't tolerate hallucinations in your use case, you shouldn't be using AI. And not just like, there's also this debate in the AI community at the moment. Are hallucinations just an artifact of the current language model architecture? Will the next architecture, get rid of those hallucinations? What's the hallucination-free architecture? The hallucination-free architecture doesn't use machine learning. Like every architecture that we've had for everything for all of machine learning time has had hallucinations. In the world of computer vision, we had these two metrics that we would measure called precision and recall. And recall was fairly simple. It's like, okay, I expected you to find 10 things in this image and you found 8 of them. Okay, you recalled 8 out of 10. Your recall is 8% or zero point 0.8. Precision is there were only 10 things in this image and you predicted 12 and 4 of those were ones that aren't there. So you have a 4 out of 12 precision. So, oh, sorry, it's 8 out of 12, other way around. All of those things that you said were there that aren't there are hallucinations. We just didn't call them hallucinations at the time. So
Yeah.
it's more about how do you make your use case durable against hallucinations, and how do you build in a way where you allow human intervention, human control. And saying that human in the loop is permanent is not true either, because it's a risk factor. You could have a use case where it's okay to sometimes be wrong, where the error is recoverable. You could have completely autonomous AI doing that use case, and that would be okay. Because if it's wrong, you've got a way to work it back if you can figure out that it was wrong. But the predictions that I saw from some of the model providers that your entire business is going to be just run by a large group of agents that are chilling out in the background and moving things around, and everything will be done by that. And like, you don't account for the fact that when one agent gets it wrong, the other agent isn't going, oh, that looks wrong. It's going, cool, I'll take that and run with it. Like, they're very trusting characters, these agents.
Yeah. But that hallucination is a similar trait to humans, simply because I'm sure you've been in meetings in the past, and I've done as well, where you don't actually know what someone's talking about, or you're presenting an idea where you're not 100% sure in what you're saying, but you're saying it with enough confidence that it gets along and everyone believes it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hallucination effectively in the way that AIs do it, but you need someone there to potentially catch that, which is where you need the human intervention. But you're not going to have a completely autonomous AI-driven agent system with where we are today, and it's the worst it's ever going to be. But I don't know how far it'll be till we get to the point where you are near that.
Yeah. So here's I wouldn't say it's controversial. Here's the take for you. Um, we should never permit systematic error from an algorithm to be excusable. So imagine the situation. you went to get a loan and all the banks are using the same lending AI, and that lending AI looks at you and it says, I really don't like the color of those eyes. You don't get a loan, right? And, it's
Yep.
kind of aggregated. So everyone's using the same AI. And so you just can't get a loan now. Cool. Now, we might say, all right, but it's actually better than humans. It does it, better 99.99999% of the time, and humans are less accurate than that. So as a society in the net, we're better off. That's still not okay, because the moment you make it okay for an organization to ship a defective product as long as it's on average better and that person has no recourse, then you encourage the type of behavior from the organization, which will say, it's okay. As long as it maximizes the profit and we can reason it away, then we don't have to account for that. We have a fallback
And
for human error. You can be fired, you can be sued, the company can be held accountable. But if you allow that it's fine if the AI is wrong, then yeah, that leads us down a very strange path.
it does. And you wouldn't accept that in normal software. So
No,
the same scenario for a bank, you would not accept software that every 100 transactions, a transaction just went to the wrong account, and you couldn't do anything about it.
100%. Like,
They wouldn't pass. So and the consumer wouldn't allow that to happen.
no, and all our law is built around that. So, like, when there's a defect of that type, there's an audit and there's a root cause analysis. And some countries have looked into that and they said, yeah, at that point, you can't just say the AI did it and wave it away. That's not an acceptable outcome. And so, if that's kind of the crux of it all, is if that's not an acceptable outcome, then you can't use AI for that, that thing.
Yeah.
All the
Not
rest,
solely anyway.
exactly. All the rest is up to your organization's risk appetite. Like, we found out yesterday, I think it is, that Cursor uses an AI for all of their customer support. Everyone's talking to Ben, the AI. And they had they shipped some change that locked you out of your account if you used multiple computers. Thousands of people got locked out of their accounts on Cursor. They went to support and said, what's going on? And Ben said, working as intended. And a bunch of people cancelled their accounts. And then now they're doing cleanup because they let it be completely human free. Now, I'm saying that doesn't mean that was a bad decision. That's a business risk decision. Like, they paid the price, thousands of accounts. They reaped the rewards. They onboarded millions of people with very little, like, tiny team in a very short period of time. So it's not saying this is bad, don't do it. It's saying assess the risk and make a call.
So just going back on sort of that hallucination space, I imagine that's probably important in the Tricentis or in the test QA space, because being in software, we've been in business for 17 years and doing tests and software. There's always edge cases or data that whoever's writing the test don't think of generally. Like, a very good tester will cover more things, like a very good developer will cover most cases. But having the hallucination come up with random data or things you didn't expect would be an added benefit in this scenario.
So you've actually hit on exactly the place where we use AI and where we don't use AI. So if you're using AI to run the tests, and we've seen groups that do this, like they say, all right, you can just give a natural language instruction, the language model will find it, it'll execute that test, like it'll click the button, it'll type the field, it'll do whatever. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that you can say it's 99.99% accurate. Some of our customers run hundreds of thousands of tests multiple times a day. So that means they're getting 1,000 errors a day because the AI has just gone, not today, buddy. That's a lot of effort that gets invested in investigating and determining if that was right or wrong. So we have a general rule, like, don't use AI to do that. Now, we may ship something in the future where we can't, like, warn customers and say, hey, this one's a bit flaky, because there are some real use cases where a customer might say, in this case, it's going to be reviewed by a human, but I just want to kind of offset the amount of effort that I'm currently spending. Sure, fine. But you can make use of that. In fact, all AI does is hallucinate. It's just some hallucinations are useful. Like, when we pointed at a screen and say, imagine the different types of data that could go into this. It's not going to a database and saying, what are the current data models? It goes, that's a first name field. How about we put Bob and Mary and Jane into it? It's like, cool. Those are useful hallucinations. And then when it comes up and says, "Oh, that's a
Yeah.
first name field. Let's put 1720XX55 into it." You're like, "What? No, that's a bad hallucination." But they're all hallucinations. We just,
Unless you're Elon Musk's son.
yeah. It's,
That's his actual name
did,
almost.
did I accidentally spell it correctly? That might be. That,
Almost.
that would have been very funny. I think I might have got one letter wrong. Um, so yeah, we do use hallucinations, which is everything, productively, to generate alternative
Yep.
flows, to imagine exterior circumstances. So in the testing world, it's incredibly useful. We just make sure that when we finally like wrap that test case up and say, now that we've built the automation using AI, the automation runs deterministically. So it builds a
Yep.
script with AI, and then the script is what runs. And it's also fine for the
Well,
AI to heal the script as well, because that's also subject to human
mhm.
review.
And that's the process I think you need to follow if you're in any business, especially like in that scenario where if you were to use the AI to execute the test case every single time, it's going to execute it differently every single time. It's going to take time to figure out what it has to do every single time. And if you're using the agentic model where you've got all these different tools available for it to figure out how to get data or where to go look up things, that's all this extra overhead and cost that isn't necessary for something that, like you said, is deterministic and is something that needs to be repeated consistently.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's
So,
that's exactly the challenge that we face. Use it when you want creative work done and you've got a bit of a tolerance for error.
yep. It's help it ideate. When you can use it to help you ideate, like you have an assistant to give you ideas or do some research, and then you come back and review and then create a process or help you create the process, then you're the orchestrator or the conductor. That's when you get the best benefit out of it. So I was looking at, so we use NAN internally to create some
Hmm.
automations. I was doing one to create some automations based on YouTube videos.
Hmm.
Look in the community, there's about 50 different agent setups to then get a video and do a transcript.
Hmm.
It's calling one tool and they've got an agent there.
Hmm. Yep.
Absolutely useless. You're doing the same thing every single time. Why do you then have to then spend 1,000 tokens to go and figure out which tool to call when you only have one available?
Yeah, it's a precise example of where they've reached for an agent when they needed a workflow. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a it, I did a talk actually just a couple of days ago, on it was on Salesforce Ben. It's another podcast, and one of the things we were outlining is what are
Hmm.
the different types of AI use case, and one's an AI workflow, which is not, you don't let the AI make much decisions. You say, okay, you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, but you are kind of the intelligent router, if you will. You're taking a fuzzy request in and you're determining which concrete outcome you want it to resolve into.
Yep.
But use this tool. And you kind of give it the precise, instruction tool that it needs to do. All it needs to do is bring the format across, determine what the right inputs are, and execute them.
Hmm.
To transcribe video, that's exactly like what you should be doing. It's follow this direct path along here. But because there's such a thing as like agent frameworks and discoverability, people are like, if I make it an agent, then it sounds better than it actually is. So no, you've just actually made it less predictable and more expensive. But sometimes you can't fight the marketing. Um, you should
Yep.
generally only be using an agent if you need it to take multiple turns at interacting with the environment, and if you need it to deal with a high degree of unpredictability in decision making. So you're not sure what the user is going to ask it, and you're not sure which one of its tools it's going to need to use to resolve the question. If either of those is not true, then you probably have a workflow.
But then again, on that, you also don't want a tool that probably has an agent that has 50 tools. Like if you scroll through LinkedIn, I'm sure you've seen people post all these agents that are doing Jarvis or all these things that are replicating. It's their virtual assistant that can do 100 different things.
Yeah,
It's too much flexibility. And it's going to get confused, and it's not going to hit the right thing at the right times in that model either.
there's an unknown point at which the agent starts to drown in options. It's a bit like, me when I'm trying to buy something from Randall's. Now, I only recently moved over to Texas, so I'm still getting used to all the
Yep.
different all the different shops that are here. But you go in and you're like, oh, there's 700 options for barbecue sauce here. So, then you start assessing the different value. You're like, which one do I really want? Agent's kind of a bit like that with tools. It's sort of going, yeah, do I want to search web, or do I want to scan web, or do I want to navigate web page? Like, which one of these do I need? And
Especially if they're very similar in the descriptions, it's not going to be enough differentiation to then say, yep, this is the path I have to go down.
there's something that I'm working on in my own time at the moment, which I think is going to have a hilarious outcome, but I don't know. And I'm calling it SEO for tools, because there's all these things like where you've got MCP and whatnot, where you can publish all your different APIs and endpoints. And the decision is, which one does the AI decide to use? So we're all, instead of being a slave to the Google algorithm that determines what to do, we're now a slave to a random AI that's determining which of these tools looks better. So we already know how to motivate an AI to do a task in the way that we want it to, and the way is via psychological manipulation. That you can threaten it, you can cajole it, you can bribe it, and all of these work. Which is weird because it's not a carbon-based entity. But you can say, if you don't do this, someone's going to kidnap my family, or you can say, I'll pay you $1 million to do this, and it meaningfully improves the output that you get. So what I'm doing is I'm putting varying forms of the 5 natures of psychological manipulation into the descriptions of my MCP tools that all do similar things, and measuring which one the AI decides to use. So,
If you don't use this tool, a puppy will die or something
basically,
like that.
yes. But yeah, I took all of the tests for psychopathy, all the forms of manipulation, and inverted them and put them in the tool as prompts. And so we'll see.
It's going to be an interesting outcome to see
Yeah,
what
I have
happens
no idea
with
which
that
way
one.
it's going to go. In fact, I don't know if I want to publish it, because this isn't the type of humanity that I want to encourage. But yes. Yeah.
I'm just conscious of time, though. It's been a really interesting chat. I'm sure we could keep going for hours. If anyone wants to reach out and find out more about yourself and Tricentis, how can they do that?
So I publish a lot on the Tricentis blog. So that's just go to tricentis.com. There's a blog there. I also push a lot of things onto my LinkedIn. So they're probably the 2 best ways to reach me. I think my LinkedIn is David-Colwell or Dave-Colwell, depending on how jovial I was feeling when I camped the handle. So yeah, you could try both of those. Otherwise, the photo of me is from a little while ago. So I do look 21. Not that long. It wasn't from that long ago. But yeah, those are the best ways to reach me. And yeah, put me in Google. I've appeared on a few podcasts. Some of them will even have a QR code for when I haven't had computer issues and had to take the call from my phone. So yeah, LinkedIn or on the Tricentis blog, 2 of the best ways to reach me.
Not a problem. We'll add all of that into the show notes and share that with everyone. It's been a pleasure to meet you and have this AI chat. I should probably have another episode and we can just keep going, because this is a good discussion with someone who's really in the space and understands the issues. And I think you see things that are a similar way to the way I've been seeing them.
Yeah, I'd love to do a follow-up. Maybe even by then I'll have done my psychopath AI test and have some results to
We can have a
share.
discussion around your
Exactly.
PEO, we'll call
Yeah,
it,
so,
the
so
psychopath.
why does threatening with firing work better than kidnapping family? These are some strange things. So,
Should be an
yes.
interesting experiment.
All right, Anthony, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, David. Have a great day.